our bookmarking, and some kind of logistical things when using iPads. And so I hope you get a lot out of this session. I'm going to share my screen in a minute and show you the different aspects. I've got my iPad screen projected onto my Mac, and I'm going to see if this works. So bear with me, be a little bit patient. But one of the things that we often find on phones, because what I do today also applies with phones as well, one of the things I find is now we take lots of photos, and we don't just take photos for holidays and kind of personal use. We're actually taking lots of photos for business and for work and for school. And if we go to our camera roll, what we're seeing is thousands of photos. And when I need to get to those important little snippets, it could be a photo of a meeting or a video of a meeting, or it could be a photo of the whiteboard where there were some notes taken, or a website that we want to go to. We find that the photos, because there's thousands of them there, we're just not organized, and we can't actually retrieve those things. So I'm going to share the screen now, and some of my friends will be able to tell me if this is working. I have a little bit of a sip over tea. Got my Melbourne breakfast tea this morning, and I'm going to share some of the things that have really helped me get organized with my iPad, which is kind of my primary device that I use most times. So here we go. I'll share screen, and I'm going to minimize that, and I'm hoping that you can see my iPad screen on your screen. So some of my colleagues at UTV will be kind of giving me some feedback here. Hopefully you see a little iPad screen where my apps are. And I would like to talk through a couple of things if I can at the start here. So the first thing I want to talk about is today's view. So if I swipe with my finger to the right, you'll see I've got my today's view. It gives me my screen time, shortcuts, maps. My stocks are going really well at the moment, which is great. I don't need to buy or sell at the moment. They're going beautifully. I've got some suggested apps. I've got my calendars and that sort of thing. So some people have asked, Paul, how do we actually edit those? So down the bottom, there's a little edit button. And what you can do is you can customize and personalize your little today's view there. So that's a really great way of customizing what you see. I mean, I love the news coming through. I love access to the apps that I need. And I certainly like my calendars and my iCal coming up on the left. And that's just swiping, and you can adjust that at any stage. Now, if you're like me, you've got thousands of photos in your camera roll. So if I press on photos down the bottom here, you'll see all of mine. Recently, I've got 1,500 here. So one of the things, and I've got some really I've got some movies in there, and I've got some images in there. I've got Cary Grant there and a couple of art things I've been playing around with, which is great, but how do I organize them? Well, you'll see down the bottom, I've got photos, for you, albums, and search. One of the things that I like to do is actually organize my folders and my albums, really, really clearly. So we do that by pressing select at the top right-hand corner, selecting on the images that you want to keep there. And then at the top left-hand corner, there's a little kind of export button, and we can add to an album. And this is where I can actually create an album. I might call this color and save. And you can see that they've been saved into my albums. So albums are really, really handy because you can see here, it keeps me organized. I can retrieve things really, really quickly. I can put any green screen or any multimedia things in certain spots. And it's a really great way. The more albums you can create to organize your kind of work and your personal life, the better. And I guess the main thing is this week's all about organization, and it just organizes you a little bit better. You're able to retrieve things at a quicker rate, which is what we're all about here. Now, you will have noticed there that we've also got files. Did you know down the bottom next to my mail, there is a folder called, there's an app called Files. And what that Files does is it allows me to create different files. I've got recent, and I can browse my files there as well. Some people didn't realize that on iPads, you do have file structures and folder structures that you can actually create on your iPad. So how do we use that? Well, let's say I'm in Keynote. I'm doing a little project here on the heart, And up the top right-hand corner, I can actually export that Keynote file. Let's say I want it as a PDF, and I'll go to export. And down the bottom when I'm sharing it, I've got a whole lot of different options: Teams, Mail, Message, AirDrop, but I can actually save it to files. And you can see here, I've got all of my files sorted in kind of software. And that's really important for me, that when I'm actually uploading different things, I can actually go to, I need to do some augmented reality. I need to retrieve a file from Adobe Aero or GarageBand or Explain Everything and so on. So at the top there, next to save, you can actually see a little create folder button. And I might call this anatomy. And all of a sudden there, I can save that Keynote into my anatomy file. So once again, if you've never used files before, it's a fantastic way of categorizing, organizing your work into some structures. And if you've got iCloud set up, those files and folders will actually carry over on multiple devices, which is fantastic and we love. The other thing that really helps me with my organization is just dragging my finger down and searching for set things. So if I'm searching for something to do with Teams, we've done a lot of Teams lately. You can see here, I've got some Wikipedia. I've got some calendar views that are related to Teams, Microsoft Teams. I've got the application itself. I've got some settings there. I've even got some notes that I've been using with Donna, one of my colleagues, and you can actually retrieve all those just by going to your search on the side. So how did I do that again? I just drag my finger down and I get my search bar or my spotlight similar to Mac, and it retrieves all of those things to do with Teams or whatever search keyword that you're actually using. So that helps me a lot. Because I have so many apps, it's really important for me to actually use that feature. For students and people, they often like creating folders on their desktop with their apps in it. So let's have a look. I've got some Photoshop applications here. You can see I've got Photoshop and Adobe Aero. If I hold my finger down on Aero, you can see I can delete it or I can actually group it inside. And when I drag it onto another app, I can actually create little folders. Let's call this Adobe. That's cool. And all of a sudden now, I've got a little Adobe folder. When I was teaching, the kids love to do color codes. They put all the green icon apps in the green folder and they created it. I'm a little bit different there. I like to create kind of the names and maybe the software packages that I like to use. But to be honest, if you use that drag down and search, that almost becomes a little bit obsolete in regard to creating those folders for me. I like to just drag and do a quick search on that app straight away. The final thing I want to show you today is organizing your web searches. So if I go to Safari, and we know that Safari is the default web browser for iPad, you can download things like Chrome and other applications for web browsing, but Safari works beautifully in regard to all these things. Can I show you a couple of things that you might not know about? The first thing, if I go right at the top, I've done a little bit of a search on coronavirus. If I hit the little export button there, I can add some bookmarks, or I can add it to my reading lists or my favorites. So if I, for example, said I'm going to add that to my reading favorites, save automatically. Then at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the little page icon, and we've got those different things there. So if I go to my reading list there, you can see the coronavirus is sitting there beautifully. And we've also got some other things. We've got our history, and we've got our bookmark bar as well, and we've got our searches there too. And I just touch that icon to turn that off each time. So that's a great way to get organized with your bookmarks, especially with Safari. And the last thing that I want to show you, a lot of people don't know about, is when I'm looking at websites, I like to see if it's actually applicable to me and it's the one that I want. And one of the most underutilized applications or tools is the Find on Page. You're going to love this. So when you press Find on Page, I'm going to type in the word infection, and I'm going to search, and what that does is it highlights all of those keywords within that website that shows me if it's actually applicable for me, or it shows me where I can actually read more specifically about infection rates with coronavirus. So that's something that I always used to show my students, because it was a really great way of them kind of summarizing and having a look at keywords in regard to websites, documents, a whole range of different things that you can use that for. So that's Paul's Apple tips, iPad organizational tips for today. It's been 10 minutes and I hope that you got something out of that today. I'm going to have another little sip of my tea, my Melbourne breakfast tea, and I hope you have a wonderful day.